Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We have some special guests on the line. We have Tamala Payne and attorney Sean L. Walton. Now, if you guys remember, they checked in a couple of months ago, and they're giving us some updates. But for people that don't know, because we hear about stories of brothers getting shot and killed all the time. I know we were talking about it earlier. We were like, yeah, he's the brother that got shot in the back. And it was like, damn, which brother? So can you just give us some updates of who
Casey Goodson
was and what happened in that time, so people never forget his name? And good morning.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having us. You know, we respect and appreciate this platform so much. And Tamala insisted that she wanted to talk to her friends as we release more information. So, you know, we appreciate you guys uplifting Casey Goodson's name. And so, you know, our last interview, unfortunately, was right after Casey was killed. And so the family was put in this position of having to try to, you know, talk about who Casey was while also seeking answers themselves. And so we didn't have a lot of answers,
Right.
but now we do have more answers. And so we think it's important to let the world know that we know now more than ever that Casey Goodson Jr. was an innocent Black man who was murdered by Franklin County Sheriff's Deputy Jason Meade on December 4th, 2020. And we didn't know before. We thought that he was shot in the back a few times. Casey's grandmother saw 3 gunshots, but we've spoken with the county coroner that performed the autopsy. And Casey was shot in his back 6 times, 5 times in his back and once in his butt with a high-powered rifle. And he was shot through his screen door as he walked into his own home. He was shot from behind. His keys were in the door. He had Subway in his hand. And so it was a cold-blooded execution. And Casey was murdered, and the world needs to know that.
man, and I see now that there could potentially be some federal charges. Is that true?
Yeah, so the Department of Justice and the FBI have been leading this investigation because the ball was dropped early on by the local police. And so the feds have been investigating, and they may bring federal charges, they may bring state charges, but they have been in consistent communication with us. And so we understand that they're pursuing the truth, and the truth is going to lead to the understanding that Casey was murdered. So yeah, they are investigating, and they could bring federal charges.
Now, Tamala, how are you doing? How are you holding up? How is everything with you?
I mean, I'm doing as well as I can. Really, as I stated before, I don't really allow myself to feel right now. I feel like if I allow myself to feel, then I can't fight. And my whole everyday purpose is to fight for justice. Because as Sean said, Casey wasn't murdered, he was executed. I've seen the pictures of my son's back. He blew a chunk out of my son's back. He has sermons where he talks about hunting people and uses his platform as a pastor to describe police brutality, so to speak. And he's bragged about how he hunts people and he throws the first punch. And unfortunately, on that day, he definitely hunted my son and he killed him in cold blood. You know, and I want justice. I mean, my son was a 23-year-old man. He's never been in trouble in the law. He was a family man. He didn't club. He was a good kid. He didn't deserve this. He was coming home from the dentist. You know, when the case first started, we thought he was only shot 3 times in the back because there were 3 bullet holes in the screen door. So the assumption was there were 3 shots to his back. But there's 5 shots. There's 5 shots to the back and 1 to his butt, and I've seen every shot. I did sit down.
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I did sit down with the coroner and the pathologist that performed the autopsy, and they explained every bullet wound to me in great detail. He hit basically every organ my son has. It's no way to explain how I feel other than the fact I want him in jail. The man still has a job. He's still employed to this day. It's day 68, and he still has a job. He shouldn't have been on the assignment he was on in the first place because of his extensive record as a sheriff's deputy. He was involved in an altercation in 2018 that left 2 men dead. He was involved in another shooting. He was on a no contact order with inmates where he worked, where your job is to work with the inmates. He couldn't even have contact with them. So he shouldn't have been on the assignment that he was on the day that he was on it that led to my son's murder in the first place. And then he still has a job after 68 days. You know, he still has a job. He hasn't been arrested. You know, he doesn't deserve a job. He shouldn't be employed.
I agree. And that's the officer, Jason Mead, who you're speaking
Correct.
on. I want to flash back to what you said. So I saw there was a video or something that he was posting where he was talking about using religion to justify brutality. Is that what you were referencing earlier?
Yes, he made a sermon. I actually listened to it for the first time the other day. I've heard about it. I've read some of the things that he said, but the first time I actually listened to the video was Saturday, to be honest with you. And yes, in the video, he definitely says he hunts people. He stated that the people that I hit, you wish you could hit too, and his congregation laughed. He bragged about his colleagues and his supervisors being a part of the congregation. They were all laughing and cheering and clapping him on. He also said he throws the first punch. He doesn't wait for the first punch to be thrown. He throws the first punch. So yeah, he used it to brag about police brutality and basically killing innocent Black men. It's clear.
No. As far as this case, what's next? What can people do to help if we can help? What's what's next now?
So a few things. One, you know, we need people to stand up and stand with this family, because far too often, like you said, Envy, we hear these names and then they, you know, go in one ear and out the other. And, you know, what we can say is that Casey Goodson was an innocent Black man that did everything right and was still executed. And so one is the immediate termination of Jason Mead, you know, calling for that, and also his arrest and pushing for that, keeping that pressure on. You know, there's no video, but what we know is that the physical evidence shows that he was hunted and he was killed, and there's no justification for it. So calling for Mead's termination, holding his sheriff's office accountable, as well as holding the Department of Justice accountable for prosecuting him. Also, we're going to have a website, justiceforcaseyGoodsonJr.com, that's going to aggregate all this information and keep folks updated on calls to action, and you know, making sure that this doesn't die down. As we know with George Floyd and Eric Garner and others, seeing video is something that has lifted those names up. But in cases like Breonna Taylor, it's the push from the people across the country that gets justice. And those officers still weren't indicted. So we want to make sure that we have justice here, we have a conviction, and that we normalize the conversation around Black people and guns. That's really important. We're working on Casey's Law, working on federal and state legislation here in Ohio, but federal legislation throughout the country that protects legal gun owners, because far too often law enforcement sees a gun and sees a Black person with the gun and views us as a threat. And so it's perfectly normal for people like Casey to be lawful gun owners, and even myself, and anybody else in this country, and that can't be a death sentence. So Casey's Law, justice for Casey through me being arrested and terminated, and you know, making sure that this does not happen again.
And I do want to encourage people to follow Tamala and Sean on social media, if you guys could give that out, to repost those stories, because it does matter. Because I do feel like for some reason, like you said, maybe it's not having the video, but this hasn't been getting the attention that other cases have gotten from somebody. You know, Casey hadn't done anything wrong. He was shot in the back by a police officer. That police officer has had no repercussions, but I feel like the story hasn't been viral the way that it should be.
You know, for sure. And again, you know, Breonna Taylor took a while to come to the forefront. Ahmaud Arbery, you know, it's unfortunate that in this country, without video, Black people's stories aren't believed or aren't taken serious, and you know, we don't get behind it. You know, we're somewhat desensitized to the violence against our bodies in this country. But as Tamala stated, you know, we've seen pictures of Casey's body. He was murdered. He was executed, and the country should be up in arms about that, and we'll keep pushing and continue telling that story, because he was walking into his own home. You know, he was gainfully employed. He worked hard. He left the dentist, and it's a tragedy. It is a tragedy. So we want to keep uplifting his name and telling this story.
Now, if I was saying,
and Tamala, I'm so sorry you even have to look at pictures like that. That must be one of the most painful things
It
that
was.
you've
It
had
was
to?
very painful. It was very painful, and it's an image that I see every day. Um, it also gives me the pain is the drive for the fight. You know what I mean? Like, I actually struggled because I was going to release a photo to allow the world to see what he did to my son. Um, because as I said, he blew a chunk of my son's back off, like it's gone. Um, but I have other kids, and once you release something like that, it's something that goes everywhere. And the state of our minds is already so gone. My 5-year-old tells me all the time he still hears the glass breaking in his ears. Like, you know, my mother, she fell that night, and y'all already knew that she had to go to the hospital. She hit her head that night. I asked the doctor about the head injury. He said it was just a goose egg. Well, unbeknown to us, she had been deteriorating. So just 2 weeks ago, we rushed her to the emergency room. Her brain been bleeding since that night when she fell. She had a stroke and fell and hit her head. So she just had to undergo brain surgery. This all stems from what Jason Meade did.
Yeah.
So I just didn't want to put something out there like that the kids will get their hands on and see, because it's something that you cannot erase from your mind.
I was gonna say, if Charlamagne was here, he would say, as far as the family and yourself, are you speaking to somebody, a therapist, somebody, because there's so much trauma and they've seen so much, and especially the kids and grandma, or were they able to talk to somebody and try to get that out? Because I couldn't even think about my kids having that trauma on myself, without being able to talk it out and try to release somehow.
The kids are being set up for therapy. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I don't want to. I'm not ready to feel it. I feel it, but I only allow myself to feel to a certain extent. I just feel like it's just too painful. I wouldn't be able to take the stance that I'm taking for him right now.
Gotcha.
If I allow myself to go through that.
Gotcha.
And I saw you were speaking to Andre Hill's family as well. Can you shed some light on that story?
Just that I am very elated that he was arrested and charged. He deserves it. We stand in full unity with Andre's family. That was another senseless murder. He didn't do anything. Fortunately, that one was on camera, so the process moved along for them a little faster, but we are elated that he's in the situation that he's in. I'm not happy about his bond, but we stand with the Hill family.
And just to tell a bit more about that, because this happened 3 weeks after Casey was murdered. Andre Hill was an unarmed Black man that was murdered, and that officer, that Columbus police officer, said that he thought he saw a gun, and Andre was unarmed. So again, it goes back to this conversation around Black people and guns. Casey had every right to carry a gun that day, and he likely had a gun, and an officer executed him simply based on the fact that he saw this Black man with the gun. Andre Hill was murdered 3 weeks later, and that officer claimed that he saw a gun. So, it's going to keep happening unless we really expose the fact that law enforcement officers have mastered the art of getting away with murder. They say that they saw a gun and that's enough to get them off, but that can't be enough here. If you have a Black man that's executed walking into his own home, shot in his back with a rifle, that has to shock the conscience, even without video. Andre Hill was on video murdered, and he was unarmed. So this is happening right here in Columbus. It's happening across the country. It's been happening for far too long. So we have to work on passing legislation such as Casey's law that protects Black people in this country, because enough is enough.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for checking in and continuing to give us updates.
Yeah. And we'll continue to check back in with you, because, I know right now they're doing an investigation. Is there a date set for anything yet, anything?
So there's not a date set yet. They've been keeping us updated. So it's a bit different. I mean, we trust the process because we have to rely on the process. But I would say, going forward into the spring here, if we're not seeing an indictment and an arrest, then, we will have questions, because the physical evidence is there. And the only justification that Jason Meade has is his own rehearsed police lie that he saw Casey point a gun. That only came out, weeks later, once his attorney figured out what needed to be said to allow Jason Meade to get away with murder. So there's no set timeline, And we'll be patient because we understand that it's difficult to convict a police officer, but that patience only lasts so long. You know, we need accountability here because he bragged about this. He bragged about hunting people, and he can't get away with that. You know, he has to stand in those statements and stand in that murder charge that he is soon to face.
And you know, aside from that, even that video alone, he shouldn't even have that job, like you said previously. He should have been fired. And even just seeing that should be grounds enough. If not, you know, while they're doing this investigation, it should be, well, we can't have somebody with that mindset or that justification, even in the police department.
Exactly. And that's something that I wanted to ask his boss, Dallas Baldwin, about. But every time I requested to speak with his boss says he's been advised by his advisors not to speak with me. But the Department of Justice, who is handling Casey's case, keeps me updated on what's going on with the investigation regularly without jeopardizing anything about the investigation. So if they can sit down and talk to me, there's no reason why you're not able to talk to me. He just does not want to answer the questions that I have for him.
Okay.
Well, Tamala Payne, attorney Sean L. Walton, thank you for checking in, and just give us any updates anytime something pops up, please.
You're always
Absolutely.
welcome. We definitely want to make sure we keep everybody informed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.